Nintendo's entire circle of life goes as follows: success, arrogance, failure, humbleness, repeat. And at the time of this recording, we're right in the middle of Nintendo's most recent arrogance phase due to the success of the Switch 1. But the real $100 question at hand, though, is how long is this phase gonna last before we finally see failure and humbleness again? We'll take a seat right next to your Aunt Ape, and I'll tell you when. Okay, so remember when the original Switch first came out? Pretty much every YouTube recommendation you'd see back then praised it, and for good reason too, because honestly, it was pretty awesome, especially at the time. Sure, some of you won't admit that now since the Switch kind of became synonymous with soy jacks, but I mean it was a freaking hybrid console slash handheld that you could play pretty much any game ever on. Best of all, it was pretty cheap too, which is why 160 million people overlooked the graphical shortcomings. These days, though, it's pretty much impossible to open YouTube up without seeing like 5 video recommendations about how the Switch 2, and really Nintendo in particular, are being greedy, which is the exact opposite of the same time period during the original Switch's lifespan. Everybody's clearly mad at Nintendo right now, and for good reason, too. Increased prices for consoles and games, game keys without games on them, $100 for the Virtual Boy add-on, $50 for amiibos, which personally pisses me off, region locking, subscription models with no option to buy, upgrade tools for old games, and so many other things too, but that's just off the top of my head. Despite all that, the sales for the Switch 2 are still strong with the console breaking all kinds of records. Although in all fairness though, I don't think that means that nobody's actually mad and that Nintendo's got nothing to worry about. Because while the sales figures are great so far, somewhere between 5 to 10 million in the first 4 months, all this really determines is how many die-hard Nintendo fans there are so far. I mean, the original Switch sold about 160 million consoles, so unless the Switch 2 comes close to that number, it's just not fair to say that everybody's just buying a Switch 2 anyway, so therefore Nintendo won't suffer any consequences, because the reality is, it's still too early to tell. I mean, think about it. If 20% of the Switch 1's fans were Nintendo can do no wrong diehards, then that would mean that the Switch 2 is gonna sell about 32 million consoles at the bare minimum. And if that's the case, then it makes sense that the console's been selling as well as it has so far, even if the other 80% are pisser than shit. And unfortunately for everybody, this means that it'll take at the very least a little while for Nintendo to reach the failure and, more importantly, humbleness phases. That's not to say that Nintendo were saints during the Switch's life cycle, because even at their lowest point during the Wii U's life cycle, they still pulled malarkey like the Nintendo Creators Program. So you can chalk some of Nintendo's recent arrogance up to just being Nintendo, but a lot of it, like $50 amiibos, is just them sniffing their own farts because they think they can do no wrong. I made a video a while back saying that we're all to blame for creating this monster because of the Switch 2's record sales, myself included, by the way. But even so, I still think people need to speak with their wallets anyway. Like, again, I bought a Switch 2 at launch, so I'm partially to blame too, but I still think a lot of what Nintendo's doing is lame. I just don't think that every last thing is automatically a deal breaker is all, and we're not really gonna know what Nintendo's ceiling is with their new attitude until we see what everybody's breaking point is. I mean, I bought a Switch 2 because personally, I didn't find the launch price to be too much for me, all things considered. Like, I wasn't happy about it, and I'm not rich or anything like that, but I do know that I'll play the console a lot over the next few years. And since I played Switch 1 games, I was at least able to sell that and its controllers to essentially get a decent discount on the Switch 2. So, yeah, I caved. $500 minus $150-ish for a new console and Mario Kart for me wasn't exactly a deal breaker, even if I wasn't necessarily happy about the price. But even so, Nintendo's cockiness is still gonna lose some money from me, because I'm not gonna just blindly buy every single game they price at $70 or $80, whereas I bought more first-party games on the Switch 1 than I skipped. This time around, though, I'm not gonna pick games up unless I feel like I really can't miss them if they're gonna hardball the game prices the way they have been, and I'm damn sure not buying any more amiibos. And the Virtual Boy accessory? Well, to be honest, my initial reaction was, oh, look at that. That's kind of a neat little optional thing, I guess. And when I saw that you can't just play the games without the 3D effect and that this stupid little add-on's gonna be $100 friggin', I just straight up felt insulted. And look, my philosophy's always been, if you don't like it, don't buy it and just move on with your day. But I don't know, something about this just makes me want to see it fail, you know? Which is ironic, as one of the very few people who actually got a Virtual Boy when it was originally a thing. I mean, I wasted my friggin' birthday wish on the original Virtual Boy, but it's not me wanting revenge even. My gripe really comes down to the fact that you can't just play these games without that stupid little accessory. At the end of the day, Virtual Boy games are basically just 2D games with a little 3D gimmick going on. I mean, I played and owned literally the entire library at one point, including Jack Bros. So I can tell you firsthand that all these games would work fine without that 3D effect, except possibly 3D Tetris, but that game's not even fun anyway. But I guess now this is just turning into a Virtual Boy video. But my point is that even though I bought a Switch 2, Nintendo's still leaving a lot of my money on the table with some of the stunts they've been pulling, and I'd imagine that the same's true for a lot of people who still bought a Switch 2. Just because the numbers are strong wrong so far doesn't mean Nintendo's completely getting away with it. Just that they're getting away with it for now, and more likely than not the foreseeable future too. And how mad everybody truly is will ultimately determine how long they'll get away with it. As for how long this might be, I'd say at least for a few years, and at most until the next console generation. If you put a gun up my ass and made me give a definitive estimate though, I'd say that the Switch 2 is gonna be to the Switch 1 what the 3DS was to the DS. Or maybe even what the Super Nintendo was to the NES. But unlike the Switch 2 though, the 3DS sold terribly in the beginning before rebounding after price cuts and apologies, but eventually it did do alright. I gotta see the opposite happening with the Switch 2 when it's all said and done though, with the console selling well in the beginning before slowing down later on. And when I say later on, I don't mean like 8 or 9 years from now. I mean, at the time of this recording, it's already slowed down a little bit from launch, but once the holidays and bigger games start coming out, a lot more people are gonna start caving, mark my ass. Of course, Nintendo only has so many games that'll make the truly angry people cave though, so I just can't fathom Switch 1 numbers this time around. In the end, I'd imagine around 70 million consoles sold, or 100 million if Nintendo cleans their act up. But to be honest, I just don't see that happening with recent corporates' goals being seemingly more profit-driven than before even. Whether it's 70 million or 100 million though, I just don't see Nintendo truly learning their lesson either way. However, I do see goodwill and patience among the average Nintendo fan running out by the time the next consoles come out though. At least at this current rate anyway. If Nintendo doesn't make changes, I think they're at serious risk of losing relevance. And like, it'd definitely take a lot for them to just straight up go bankrupt or out of business. So I'm not saying they'll disappear anytime soon, or even lose money for that matter. I just think if their arrogance is inevitably gonna catch up with them is all, even if not anytime soon. But anyway, let me know when you think that Nintendo's arrogance is gonna finally catch up to them and lead to failure. If you got a kick out of my incoherent rambling, then you should check out the video I made on the Snowboard Kid series, just because I kind of like that video. But if you'll excuse me though, I gotta go hang out with the Big Show's little brother. Later. Later.